in the scorching deserts of 6th century Arabia. A single birth would forever alter the course of human history. The man who would unite warring tribes, challenge empires, and guide over 1 billion souls began his extraordinary journey as an orphan. This is the untold story of Muhammad's miraculous beginning. The year was approximately 570 CE. The Arabian Peninsula lay fragmented under the shadow of 2 great empires, the Byzantine Romans to the north and the Persian Sassanids to the east. In the sacred city of Mecca, where ancient trade routes converged and pilgrims worshipped at the Kaaba, a story was about to unfold that would reshape civilizations. Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib was no ordinary man. Descended from the noble Quraysh tribe, he possessed both intelligence and striking handsomeness that made him the pride of his father. Abdul Muttalib, the guardian of the sacred well of Zamzam and leader of Mecca, chose for his beloved son a bride whose lineage would prove prophetically significant. Her name was Amina bint Wahb. Like Abdullah, she traced her ancestry to Abd Manaf, making them distant cousins. But what made this union truly remarkable was Amina's maternal connections. Her uncles belonged to the Aws and Khazraj tribes of Yathrib, later known as Medina. Through this marriage, the future prophet would carry the blood of both holy cities in his veins. The wedding celebration had barely ended when signs of new life stirred within Amina, but the young bride's pregnancy would be unlike any other in human memory. In the depths of sleep, visions came to her, dreams so vivid they seemed to pierce the veil between worlds. Night after night, Amina witnessed the same extraordinary scene. The child in her womb radiated a light so brilliant it illuminated not just her chamber, but spread across the earth like divine fire. Historical accounts describe this light reaching as far as Busra in distant Syria, penetrating the darkness with celestial radiance. In these mystical dreams, words formed on Amina's lips, an ancient prayer of protection. I seek refuge in Allah, the Most Great, for this child from every evil, from every envious eye, and from every jealous heart. The Arabic phrase echoed through her consciousness, as if the unborn child was already being shielded by divine providence. But fate's design carried both blessing and tragedy. When Amina had carried her child for approximately 6 months, death claimed Abdullah. The young father would never hold his son, never witness the extraordinary destiny that awaited the child he had helped conceive. Before his first breath, the future prophet Muhammad had become an orphan. The birth itself occurred on the 12th of Rabi al-Awwal, in what history remembers as the Year of the Elephant. This was no coincidence of naming. Just 50 days before Muhammad's arrival, Abraha al-Ashram had led his elephant-mounted army against Mecca in an attempt to destroy the Kaaba. The Quran tells us these invaders were repelled by flocks of birds carrying stones of divine retribution. What happened next challenges our understanding of ordinary birth. Historical sources, while acknowledging these events, transcend the prophet's inherent nobility, record phenomena that accompanied his entrance into the world. Amina, they tell us, experienced no labor pains whatsoever. The delivery was so effortless, so natural, that some accounts suggest she required no assistance at all. But the miracles had only begun. When Muhammad first opened his eyes to the Arabian dawn, he lifted his head skyward, as if in prayer to his Creator. More remarkable still, the newborn bore no umbilical cord and had already been circumcised, details that would become part of Islamic tradition, though the Prophet's greatness never depended on such signs. In distant Medina, among the Jewish tribes who had long awaited a final prophet, astronomical knowledge passed down through generations suddenly gained new meaning. Hassan ibn Thabit, who would later become the Prophet's poet and was 7 years old at the time, recalled a Jewish scholar's cry piercing the night, "O people of the Jews! Tonight the star of Ahmad has appeared, visible only at the birth of prophets." Meanwhile, in the opulent palaces of distant Persia, the Sassanid Emperor Khosrow felt the earth tremble beneath his throne. 14 terraces of his magnificent palace crumbled without warning or cause. Court astronomers and soothsayers, consulted in the emperor's alarm, declared that a prophet had been born and that 14 Persian kings would rule before their empire's final collapse. Khosrow scoffed, calculating that 14 rulers might span 14 centuries. History would prove the prophecy devastatingly accurate. Within mere decades of Muhammad's birth, internal strife would tear the Sassanid dynasty apart. 10 emperors would die in just 4 years of civil war, and the 14th would fall when Muslim armies reached the gates of Ctesiphon during the caliphate of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Across the Persian territories, another phenomenon defied explanation. The sacred fires of Zoroastrianism, which had burned continuously for over 1,000 years in temples throughout the empire, suddenly extinguished. No amount of fuel or ritual could rekindle them. From the night of Muhammad's birth until the Muslim conquest generations later, these flames that had been the heart of Persian worship would never burn again. Even the waters of the earth seemed to respond. Lake Sawa, revered by Persians as sacred and eternal, dried completely overnight. This body of water, where the dead were cremated and their ashes scattered in ritual honor, vanished so thoroughly that its very name would be forgotten by future generations. Back in Mecca, Abd al-Muttalib held his newborn grandson with hands that trembled with more than age. The tribal elder, keeper of ancient wisdom and guardian of Mecca's sacred traditions, sensed a destiny in this orphan child that transcended ordinary understanding. This child, he declared to the assembled family, will achieve something momentous. The naming itself carried profound significance. Abd al-Muttalib chose Muhammad, the Praised One. This was not a name known among the Arabs of that time. No Arabian child had ever borne this title. The choice seemed to emerge from divine inspiration, though its earthly origin lay in a journey Abd al-Muttalib had taken years before to the lands of Syria. In that distant time, traveling with 3 companions through Christian territories, Abd al-Muttalib had encountered a learned monk. This scholar of scripture had studied them carefully before declaring, "From your city of Mecca will emerge the final prophet, and his name shall be Muhammad." The revelation had been preserved in their sacred texts, waiting for fulfillment. The 4 friends had made a pact that day. Whoever among them first welcomed a grandson would bestow this prophetic name. Abd al-Muttalib was the first to receive such a blessing, and so the orphan son of Abdullah received the name that Scripture had foretold. Carrying the infant to the Kaaba, Abd al-Muttalib circumambulated the ancient shrine and proclaimed to all who would listen, "This child will accomplish great things. I name him Muhammad." But even as celebrations marked the birth, the child's story was just beginning. According to the customs of noble Meccan families, newborns were entrusted to Bedouin wet nurses, women from the desert tribes who would raise them for their first 2 years in the pure air and uncorrupted language of the wilderness. Among the Sa'd ibn Bakr tribe, a woman named Halima had arrived in Mecca seeking such employment. She and her husband Harith lived in poverty. Their dwelling was crumbling, their single camel emaciated, their 2 goats so thin they gave no milk. Halima had come to the city, hoping to secure a nursing contract that might ease their desperate circumstances. But when the Bedouin women learned of Muhammad's orphan status, they refused him one by one. An orphan meant uncertain payment, no wealthy father to ensure generous compensation. One by one, Halima's companions secured nursing contracts and prepared to return to the desert, leaving her empty-handed and despairing. Her husband Harith offered gentle counsel. "Perhaps, Halima, we should accept the orphaned child. Who knows what blessing he might bring?" With resignation born of necessity, Halima agreed. Better to return with some responsibility than with nothing at all. The moment Halima lifted the infant Muhammad into her arms, the universe seemed to shift around them. The journey to Mecca had been arduous. Her donkey was so weak and slow that her companions constantly called for her to hurry, their voices tinged with irritation at the delays she caused. But beyond material blessings, Halima observed something extraordinary in young Muhammad himself. At 2 years of age, his behavior and understanding matched that of a 6-year-old. He was remarkably easy to guide, never caused distress, and seemed to possess an innate wisdom that defied his tender years. Now, with Muhammad cradled against her chest, that same donkey suddenly surged with inexplicable energy. The animal that had struggled to carry even Halima alone now bore both her and her husband with effortless speed, racing ahead of the caravan with such vigor that her companions called out in amazement, "Halima, is this truly the same donkey you brought to Mecca?" Upon reaching their desert home, more wonders awaited. Their skeletal camel had somehow transformed. Its ribs no longer protruded, its coat gleamed with health, and most miraculously, its udder swelled with abundant milk. Every time Halima and Harith milked the animal, it immediately replenished, providing enough nourishment not only for their own family, but for their neighbors as well. The two emaciated goats underwent a similar transformation. Within days they had grown plump and healthy. The female goat became pregnant, bore offspring, and soon Halima's small flock had multiplied beyond her dreams. The surplus animals were sold to purchase a male camel, which bred with their rejuvenated female, and before long, Halima and Harith had become the wealthiest family in the Saad tribe. Their prosperity became legendary throughout the region. Other herders began following Halima's animals to pasture, knowing that wherever her livestock grazed, the land would be rich and abundant. Follow Halima and Harith's herd became the common wisdom, for their animals always find the finest grazing. But beyond material blessings, Halima observed something extraordinary in young Muhammad himself. At 2 years of age, his behavior and understanding were comparable to those of a 6-year-old. He was remarkably easy to guide, never caused distress, and seemed to possess an innate wisdom that defied his tender years. When the customary 2-year nursing period ended, Halima found herself reluctant to return Muhammad to his family. The blessings that had transformed their lives were clearly connected to his presence. She and Harith journeyed to Mecca and pleaded with Amina, "Please let him remain with us. Look how healthy and strong he has grown. We require no payment. The blessing of his presence is compensation enough." Amina, seeing her son's robust health and hearing of the remarkable prosperity that had followed his presence in the desert, agreed to extend the arrangement. Muhammad would remain with the Said tribe, though his mother would visit regularly to maintain their bond. Thus began 6 formative years in the desert, where the future prophet of Islam learned the purest form of Arabic, developed the physical resilience that would serve him throughout his life, and experienced the vast solitude of the wilderness that would later prepare him for his prophetic mission. But at the age of 6, an event occurred that would forever alter the course of Muhammad's childhood. While Halima prepared the evening meal, her son came running from the hills where the children had been playing. His words struck terror into her heart. "Mother, 2 men have attacked my Qurayshi brother." Racing to the spot he indicated, Halima found Muhammad lying still upon the ground. Her heart pounding with fear, she knelt beside him and asked what had occurred. With the innocent clarity of childhood, Muhammad described an encounter that would be recorded in authentic Islamic traditions. "2 men in white garments came to me. They laid me down, opened my chest, and removed something black from within my heart. Then they cleansed it and closed my chest again." When Halima examined the child, she found what appeared to be a thin line across his chest, as if it had indeed been opened and carefully sutured. This phenomenon, known in Islamic tradition as the cleansing of the Prophet's heart, was understood to be a divine preparation for the momentous mission that lay ahead. Terrified by implications she could not fully comprehend, Halima immediately brought Muhammad back to his mother in Mecca. "Take back your son," she urged Amina. "He is healthy and whole, but we can no longer keep him safe." When pressed for details, Halima reluctantly recounted the strange incident, but Amina's response revealed the deeper spiritual understanding she had carried throughout her son's extraordinary infancy. "Do you think evil forces could harm this child? Impossible. During my pregnancy I dreamed of protection prayers, seeking Allah's refuge for him from every evil and every envious heart. This is not the work of darkness. This is divine preparation." Nevertheless, Halima's fear could not be overcome, and Muhammad was returned to his mother's care at the age of 6, but their reunion would be tragically brief. Just months after Muhammad's return, Amina decided to visit her relatives in Yathrib, the city that would later be known as Medina. This journey held special significance, for it connected Muhammad with his maternal heritage, the Aws and Khazraj tribes, who would one day become his most devoted followers. The visit to Yathrib passed peacefully, but on the return journey to Mecca, destiny struck another devastating blow. At a place called Al-Arbwa, roughly 80 kilometers from Mecca, Amina fell gravely ill. Within days, the young mother who had carried such miraculous visions died, leaving her 6-year-old son completely orphaned. Ayman, Amina's faithful servant who had accompanied them on the journey, brought the bereaved child back to Mecca and delivered him to his grandfather, Abd al-Muttalib. The tribal leader, who had once proclaimed great things for this grandchild, now faced the responsibility of raising him. For 2 years, from age 6 to 8, Muhammad lived under his grandfather's direct care. These were formative years that would shape his understanding of leadership, diplomacy, and social responsibility. Abd al-Muttalib was not merely a tribal chief, but the guardian of Mecca's sacred traditions, the keeper of the well of Zamzam, and a man whose wisdom was sought throughout Arabia. In the council hall of Dar al-Nadwa, where Mecca's leaders gathered to resolve disputes and make crucial decisions, Muhammad was a constant presence at his grandfather's side, while Abd al-Muttalib maintained a seat that no other person was permitted to occupy, not even his own sons. Young Muhammad was always welcome there. When Muhammad's uncles attempted to move the boy from this position of honor, Abd al-Muttalib would intervene. "Leave the child be. Let him sit wherever he chooses. He alone among all my family has this privilege." Through these experiences, the future prophet learned the intricacies of tribal politics, the art of mediation, and the weight of responsibility that comes with leadership. At an age when most children played with toys, Muhammad was absorbing lessons in governance that would serve him throughout his prophetic mission. But this period of stability was not to last. At the age of 8, Muhammad faced yet another loss when Abd al-Muttalib passed away. The grandfather who had provided protection and guidance was gone, and the orphan child was entrusted to his uncle Abu Talib, Abu Talib, while noble in character and unwavering in his protective love for Muhammad, lacked his father's wealth. The family lived modestly, and young Muhammad, displaying the remarkable character that would define him throughout his life, never competed with Abu Talib's own children for food or attention. While his cousins would eagerly rush to meals, Muhammad would wait quietly in a corner until everyone had finished eating. Only then would he approach to see if anything remained. This display of selflessness and consideration moved Abu Talib to instruct his wife, "Always set aside a portion for Muhammad, for he never pushes forward like the others." Understanding the family's limited resources, Muhammad began contributing to their welfare at the remarkably young age of 8. Abu Talib worked as a shepherd for the wealthy families of Mecca, and Muhammad took over these responsibilities, leading flocks to pasture in the desert surroundings. This occupation held profound significance in Islamic understanding. The Prophet would later reveal that every prophet in history had served as a shepherd before receiving his divine mission. "There has never been a prophet," he would say, "who did not tend sheep." Islamic scholars have found deep wisdom in this pattern. Sheep are gentle creatures that do not compete aggressively for food, but graze peacefully in groups. The shepherd's life requires patience, vigilance, and long hours of solitary contemplation under the vast Arabian sky. These qualities, the ability to guide without coercion, to remain alert to danger, and to find peace in solitude, would all prove essential to Muhammad's later prophetic role. From age 8 to 21, Muhammad spent his days in the desert with the flocks, developing the physical strength, mental discipline, and spiritual sensitivity that would characterize his entire life. The seemingly humble occupation was, in divine wisdom, the perfect preparation for guiding the human flock that would eventually follow him. At 21, Muhammad transitioned from shepherding to trade. His natural honesty, reliability, and keen intelligence quickly distinguished him in Mecca's commercial circles, but it was a single incident that would establish his reputation throughout Arabia and beyond. On his first day as an independent trader, Muhammad was approached by a customer from outside Mecca who wished to purchase his goods. After completing the transaction, the man said, "I'll pay you now, but please hold my merchandise until after I complete the pilgrimage. I'll return to collect it then." This was a routine request in Mecca's bustling markets. The man departed for his religious observances, but in the excitement of the pilgrimage and the journey home, he completely forgot about his purchase. Only after reaching his distant homeland, a 3-day journey from Mecca, did he remember the transaction. 6 days had passed when the man returned to Mecca's marketplace, 6 days during which any other merchant might reasonably have assumed abandonment and resold the goods. But there stood Muhammad, exactly where the transaction had occurred, guarding the purchased merchandise as if the customer had left only moments before. "Muhammad," the astonished man asked, "have you been waiting here all this time?" "Yes," came the simple reply. "You asked me to wait, so I waited." Word of this extraordinary display of trustworthiness spread throughout Mecca and beyond. Within days, the young trader had acquired a reputation that would define him for the rest of his pre-prophetic life. Muhammad al-Amin, Muhammad the Trustworthy. Soon, wealthy merchants throughout Arabia were seeking him out, entrusting him with their most valuable goods and their most important commercial missions. Among these was a wealthy widow named Khadija bint Khuwaylid, who had built a successful trading empire through her own intelligence and business acumen. Muhammad's trading strategy was revolutionary for its time. While most merchants simply transported gold and silver to Syria to purchase foreign goods, Muhammad invested his clients' funds in local Meccan products first. He would buy goods produced in Mecca, transport them to Syria where they commanded premium prices, then use the profits to purchase Syrian goods for the return journey to Mecca. This double profit approach made Muhammad one of the most successful traders of his generation. By age 25, he had accumulated considerable wealth, enough to propose marriage to Khadija with a dowry of 20 camels, a sum worth millions in today's currency. This prosperity directly contradicts the claims of some critics who suggest Muhammad married a wealthy widow out of financial necessity. The historical record clearly shows that Muhammad was already a successful businessman in his own right when the marriage was arranged. But before that marriage would take place, one more significant encounter would mark Muhammad's youth, a meeting that would demonstrate how his prophetic destiny was recognized long before he himself understood it. At age 12, Muhammad had accompanied Abu Talib on a trading expedition to Syria. The journey itself was unusual, for the normally obedient and undemanding child had insisted with unprecedented determination that he be allowed to join the caravan. He had clung to Abu Talib's robe, refusing to let go, displaying a persistence so out of character that his uncle finally relented. As the caravan approached the Syrian borders, they passed by a monastery where a Christian monk named Bahira had lived in solitude for decades. This scholarly hermit was known throughout the region for his deep study of ancient scriptures and his knowledge of prophetic traditions. For years, Bahira had watched trading caravans pass his monastery, each time searching for signs mentioned in his sacred texts. When Abu Talib's caravan came into view, the monk immediately noticed something extraordinary. Unlike other traveling groups that journeyed under the merciless desert sun, this caravan moved beneath a small cloud that provided perfect shade. When they stopped to rest, the very trees seemed to bend their branches toward them, offering additional protection from the heat. Bahira had never seen such phenomena. He sent a message to the caravan inviting all its members to share a meal at the monastery. When the merchants arrived, however, young Muhammad remained outside with the camels, following the Arabian custom that children should not eat with adults. As Bahira studied each face around his table, comparing them with the detailed physical descriptions preserved in his scriptures, he found no matches. Finally, he inquired, "Are all members of your party present?" "No," came the reply. "We left one child outside to guard our belongings." "Please," Bahira requested, "bring him to join us." When Muhammad entered the monastery, Bahira's trained eye immediately recognized the features described in ancient prophecies. The eyebrows like drawn bows, the large luminous eyes with their thick lashes, the perfectly proportioned features that combined strength with beauty. To test his suspicions, Bahira employed a strategy known to work with any Meccan. The monk knew that all Arabs, young and old, held two idols in particular reverence, Lat and Uzza. These stone gods were so central to Meccan culture that swearing by their names was considered absolutely binding. "Child," Bahira said solemnly, "I will ask you questions in the name of Lat and Uzza." The response from 12-year-old Muhammad was unlike anything the monk expected. "Do not mention those names to me. I despise nothing more than those idols." This reaction, combined with Muhammad's physical appearance, convinced Bahira he had found the prophesied figure, but one final confirmation was needed. According to both Torah and Gospel traditions, every true prophet bore a distinctive mark, a raised seal of flesh between the shoulder blades, reddish-brown in color and covered with fine hair. "Child," Bahira requested gently, "may I examine your back?" When Muhammad consented and removed his upper garment, There, between his shoulders, was exactly the mark described in Scripture. Bahira kissed the seal of prophethood and declared with certainty, "You are the one we have been waiting for." Turning to Abu Talib, the monk's voice carried urgent warning, "Who is this child to you?" When Abu Talib initially claimed to be the boy's father, Bahira corrected him with knowledge that astonished the entire caravan. "This cannot be true. The child's father died when he was 6 months in his mother's womb. His mother passed when he was 6 years old. His grandfather raised him until age 8. You must be his uncle." Abu Talib stared in amazement. "How do you know all this?" "It is written in our scriptures," Bahira replied. "Know that your nephew is the final prophet promised to humanity. But if the Jewish tribes learn he comes from Arab lineage, they will seek to harm him as they tried to harm Jesus. Take him back to Mecca immediately. Keep him safe." The caravan turned around that very day, cutting short their Syrian venture to protect the child whose destiny had been recognized by a Christian scholar in a remote monastery. But even upon their return to Mecca, the signs of Muhammad's unique nature continued to manifest. Abu Talib, now aware of his nephew's prophetic destiny but uncertain how to process this knowledge, decided to consult the soothsayers who periodically visited Mecca. These fortune-tellers traveled from city to city, setting up their tents and offering divination services to curious residents. When Abu Talib brought 12-year-old Muhammad to their leader, the chief soothsayer studied the boy with intense concentration. Unlike his usual rapid pronouncements about other children's futures, this time he fell silent. After long minutes, he retreated to his tent, presumably to consult his spiritual sources. Abu Talib, growing uncomfortable with the delay, quietly took Muhammad home. When he returned alone to settle payment, the soothsayer emerged from his tent in obvious agitation. "Where is the child?" he demanded repeatedly. "Where is the boy who was here?" Finally, the frustrated diviner proclaimed to the crowd, "That child possesses an extraordinarily high station. He will one day lead the world." While Islamic tradition does not endorse fortune-telling, this historical account demonstrates how even those who claimed supernatural insight recognized something unprecedented in young Muhammad. The people of Mecca began to regard him with a new awareness, sensing greatness in the orphaned youth, even as they could not yet comprehend its full significance. As Muhammad matured from childhood into adolescence and then young manhood, these early recognitions would prove prophetic in ways that ancient scriptures had foretold. The orphan who had lost both parents, survived the dangers of infancy, and grown under the protection of his grandfather and uncle, was being prepared by divine providence for a mission that would transform human civilization. His character had been tested through loss and hardship. His honesty had been proven in the marketplace. His leadership qualities had been observed in tribal councils. His spiritual sensitivity had been recognized by learned scholars of different faiths. From the miraculous circumstances of his birth, through the extraordinary events that marked his infancy, to the remarkable incidents of his youth, a clear pattern emerges. This was no ordinary child, no typical member of Arabian society. Muhammad ibn Abdullah was being prepared for a destiny that would see him unite the warring tribes of Arabia, establish principles of justice and mercy that would span continents, and deliver a message that would guide over 1 billion followers across 14 centuries. The orphan of Mecca was destined to become the final messenger of God, the seal of the prophets, and one of the most influential figures in human history. His story, from the visions that accompanied his conception to the scholarly recognition of his prophetic nature, reveals the careful divine preparation that preceded his ultimate calling. But this was only the beginning. The true test of Muhammad's character and the full revelation of his mission still lay ahead, waiting for that fateful night in a cave outside Mecca, when the angel Gabriel would first speak the words, "Read, in the name of your Lord who created." The birth and childhood of the Prophet Muhammad reveal a divine orchestration that prepared him for the momentous role he would play in human history. From miraculous beginnings to the recognition of scholars, every detail pointed toward a destiny that would reshape the spiritual landscape of the world. This is the story of how prophecy was born in the desert sands of 7th century Arabia, carried in the heart of an orphaned child who would grow to illuminate the path for countless generations to come.